Who's that guy in that old shirt? Who must be the fence expert? Who's that guy in that old shirt? Who must be the fence expert? It's almost time to talk about the fences. It's time to discuss operations and expenses. It's time, it's really time to elevate small businesses. It's time to put Joe to drop his knowledge, it's relentless. This rhyme of mine is getting a bit ridiculous. So here we go, we're live with Joe. Enjoy the show.
What is up, Fence fam? So good to be back with you guys virtually, as it were, for another live Ask the Experts or Ask the Experts live Q&A. I believe that's what we call this show. So glad to be back with you guys. Again, we're wrapping up the year. We're not going to be live next week or the week after, for that matter, just in preparation for the holidays. So this is really going to be our year in review wrap up. So glad you guys could join us for that. Guys, before we get into it, let's pause and talk about the reason that this show exists. The sponsors of this show, the Expert Professional Wood Cares family of companies. I started off knowing Caleb, Ashley, and the family through through their fence stain, but they're now growing into additional lanes. They're doing pre-stain lumber, gopher wood. Guys, we pre-stain our own, but if you don't have the facilities to pre-stain your own, Go for Wood is an incredible option. They've got a lot of different solutions for your guys' and your customers' fencing projects. I like doing business with Kale and Ashley. They are sponsors because we were customers. We were customers first, and we came to really love the team, the brand, the products themselves, and I think you guys would too. If you guys are thinking about getting into staining, or if you don't want to get into staining, but you do want to offer a pre-stain product, you ought to reach out to the team. They'll take great care of you guys. Caleb, Ashley, and team, thank you. I appreciate it. Guys, it is the end of the year. Oh, we got to talk to the podcasters real quick. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you are listening to a recorded version of a live conversation I host most every Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. Central and going till 11-ish Central. We'll see where the conversation takes us and see where we go. Sometimes it's 11, sometimes it's 12. I'm betting today it's probably going to be closer to 11. But if you'd like to participate in this conversation live in the comments, check us out, youtube.com/Joe Everest on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc. Come in and join, or you could just listen to the podcast. That's fine. But we'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Again, come check us out most every Saturday, 10 a.m. Central. You can go to YouTube, follow, and subscribe, and you'll get notifications each and every time we're live. Guys, if you are listening to us live, let us know you're here by saying hello. Also, one thing I want to talk about, weekly wins, but also yearly accomplishments. So this is our year-end review. Well, let's talk about what you guys did. How was your year? How did it end up? Did it end up better or maybe not as good as you would have hoped? Let's get into it. We've got an hour to talk about anything and everything fence. I'm also happy to answer any of your guys' questions. We've got some time. Let's get into it. So let's do a week in review, I guess, or a year in review for the channel. It's been a busy year, guys. We've had a massive amount of content get put out. So whether you guys are watching us, no matter where you're watching us, even if you watch us on TikTok now, Mark and Joey and the team have been just going crazy on getting content out to you guys. I hope it's helpful. We get feedback occasionally that talks about it being helpful and that we help their business. So I hope that it also helps you guys. One of the things too to talk about is we'd like you guys to be part of the content, meaning giving us ideas for future content. Because after you've done this for, 5 or 6 years, the well starts getting close to the bottom. So we're always up for ideas. We're always looking for suggestions. If you guys have suggestions on content we could be producing or maybe be doing it better, let me know. Always happy to hear from you guys. As far as professionally, so Ozark Fence Company has had a good year. We're up 24% from last year. We're up 16% since 2020. So it's been a good year. It's been a good several years. We're just firing on all cylinders. So residential has seen an increase. The biggest increase we've seen company-wide has been commercial. Interested to hear kind of what your guys' thoughts are on your business. But here, at least in Southwest Missouri, residential has really kicked off. Commercial has gone very strong. We've also kind of tiptoed into e-commerce. That's been doing well. Just kind of selling fence fittings to people all over the country. But yeah, we brought in some efficiencies mainly through software. Actually, we just shot a video this week that'll go out. Mark, when do you think that video will go out? Next
2 p.m. today.
It's coming out 2 p.m. today. Talking about the software that we use in our business on a daily basis that makes us just either more efficient, and I was going to say, or more profitable, but typically efficiencies lead to profitability. Of course, I don't know. Maybe I'll give you guys a teaser of like 3 of them, and then you have to watch for the rest of them. If you watch the channel, and if you're in the fence industry, you obviously already know My Salesman, a great tool that we use. It's a heck of a team, a heck of a software. Also, we talk about Job Nimbus that we use as well as far as a full scope CRM, everything from communications to proposals to work orders, scheduling, invoicing is all in one. Communications, both emailing and texting. Texting has been a game changer for us lately. So if you guys were at Tony Thornton's Fence, the second annual Fence Business Conference, I believe that's what it was. Mark Olson gave a talk, and in that he kind of laid out what their best practices as far as workflow goes, meaning that it comes in as a lead and it ends up with a paid customer that's getting review requests, and then everything in between, from proposals to invoices to work orders. Every one of those steps, almost every one of those steps, had a text notification. And that's something we hadn't been doing very well as a company. So I thought, well, okay. So the thing about going to these conferences is they're really not as beneficial if you don't take nearly immediate action, right? So the longer you go without taking action, the longer it's going, or the less likely you are to take action. So I got in touch with our Job Nimbus rep, Tyler, said, hey, are there some best practices on what these texts look like? He provided some examples. We modified them to be in our words, and we started implementing them last week. Guys, the one that has worked the absolute best is when we send an invoice, it is the payment link in there. So say, hey, just emailed over your invoice. You can review it by searching your inbox. I'm paraphrasing. Or to make payments, you can also click this payment link. Click the link, it takes you. So 2 of the 5 paid within 2 days. And then the rest are, we're sending a check because we don't want to pay the fee. Totally fine. But to have 2 pay off almost immediately was a very rewarding feeling, for sure. So Job Nimbus does a great job of taking care of us. I'm gonna got my cheat sheet up here still from the video. So one more I'll give you, Company Cam. You guys use it a lot, or hopefully you guys use it a lot. I mean, everyone I think has heard of it. So Company Cam, whether it's job photos, whether it's before and after photos, whether it's a video walkthrough, something we've started doing lately that the crews really like is when we do our on-site to do the final layout with the customer, we'll put flags in the ground of where the corners are, where the gates are, etc., and then do a video walk around of that to show both the customer exactly where it's going to go, but also the crew where it's going to go. Those have been incredibly helpful, both to the crews. This also gives the customer kind of that feeling of this is locked in. We're not changing it. We're not going past the window. I had one a couple weeks ago when I was doing the video. I said, well, now, what if we actually move that gate? Okay, that's fine. I'll delete the video. We'll move the gate. We'll restart the video. But this is where the gate's going. Company Cam has been incredibly helpful. There's another one in there. I'm going to make you guys watch it to learn more about it. It's one that I don't hear a lot of people talk about in the fencing industry, but as far as if you guys are doing on-site quotes, I think it would be incredibly helpful for your time management. This is starting to be like a professional show where I tease little bits of videos for you guys to go watch later. But yeah, so we've implemented software. We've implemented we're becoming more standardized in how we do things just to make that, the bring efficiencies through just routine standard operating procedures. But yeah, I'll check in with you guys. Guys, if you're here, say hello. Let's get into it, and then we'll continue the year in review. Alan Balding. What's up, Alan? How are you? It's been a while. What's up, Fizz fam? What's up, Alan? Appreciate you tuning in with us today. Oh, maybe this should be the second half of the show. Good morning, Joe. What's up? How are you? What are your predictions for 2025 in the fence world with the elections finally over, back to a normal year? I'll tell you what. So we'll do a 2-parter. We'll do predictions here in a little bit. Guys, start getting your predictions in. Let's talk about predictions as well. But if we're talking about post-election, actually, I was having a conversation, a buddy that has a exterior, well, it's not really exterior remodeling anymore. It's more of they do really high-end decks, patios, but also outdoor living arrangements, outdoor kitchens, or covered porches with the whole outdoor entertainment suite, the TVs, the sound systems, and all that. Anyway, I had brought it up. I said, what's crazy? If we're talking about both residential and commercial, we were doing great throughout the year, but it was almost the day after the election. Now, it was probably the Monday after, right? The elections were on Thursday. So, Thursday? I don't know. Oh, I voted early, so I don't know when the actual elections were, but I think it was a Thursday. Monday, orders started flooding in. we started getting approvals. We started getting just, hey, now we're ready to move forward. Or can you update the quote? We'd given quotes, a couple months before, followed up, said, hey, the timing's not right. We're going to put this on hold. And then lo and behold, right after the election, we filled up about a month and a half's worth of work post-election in that next week or two. It was crazy just how much business was sitting on the sidelines, just waiting, which, you know what, guys, is kind of a crazy thought, right? In that, so if I'm thinking about my home purchases, I don't know that it had a direct impact on my home purchases, whoever was going to get elected, one way or the other. Now, obviously, it went one way, but if it had gone the other, I don't know that I would have changed my day-to-day habits. But there are a lot of people that get really wrapped up in the elections on the residential. Now, on commercial, that's a little bit different of a conversation because we're talking about, investing in facilities, and there's also some manufacturers that weren't sure one way or the other, depending on how the election went, how their manufacturing business was going to be affected. So one of the manufacturers, I'd had a conversation with the facilities manager, and he had basically said that same thing. It was like, we don't know which way we're going to jump as far as if we're updating this facility and remodeling this facility, or if we're going to build a new facility somewhere else, or what they were going to do. Now, it wasn't a week after election. It was a couple weeks after the election, but they decided that they were going to invest in their manufacturing here. So with that came a new layout on fencing, gates, automation, the whole kit and caboodle. So, yeah, so post-election, business has been very good. Now, what was crazy was the folks right after the election. So, we're talking early November, they waited for a while. Now, this is typical, I guess, but they wanted it done by Christmas. I said, all right, well, and usually because there's a four-legged friend coming into the family, typically puppies. I don't know that people are building many cat fences, but a lot of people getting puppies for Christmas. Couldn't find out. If you're my kids and you're watching, we're not getting a puppy for Christmas. I want to just nip that right in the bud. We got one's enough. But there are other people out there getting puppies for Christmas. And but they waited till after the election. Like, I don't know why. Like, why are we waiting till an election to decide if we're bringing a puppy home for Christmas? Anyway, but Christmas got filled up fast. So right now, currently so for those of you watching this as a recording, December 14th, now we're right now scheduling for the first week in February. We're trying to bring that back. Now, take into consideration we've got holidays, right? And as a company, we're going to be closed from Christmas to New Year's. So from December 25th, we're closed on Christmas. We're going to be closed on New Year's. We come back the day after New Year's, the 2nd of January. So yeah, it takes a week out of production. So that affects the production schedule a bit. But yeah, so we've tried bringing that back through pricing and whatnot, but we stay pretty full. But yeah, so everyone wanted it for Christmas. The first few in the door got it for Christmas. The rest, we're going to have to wait till after Christmas. Now, which means we're doing a lot of temporary fencing around backyards. We did one this week. We did one last week. We've got 2 coming up next week. Just putting temporary fence around the yard so that the puppy can go out and do the business in the backyard, but our production crews won't be there until late January, early February. So anyway, everyone waited till after the election, which is fine. But as you guys know, July would have been the month. July or August would have been the month. So for whatever reason, we had the same, I don't want to say lull, but decrease in incoming calls, right? Or proposal request, online quote tools, everything in July and August. And then it just, I don't know if it was the heat got to everybody, no one was in their yards, what. Things got a little slim. But then, lo and behold, late August, early September hit, and it was off to the races through the end of the year. Like I said, especially till after the election. So it's been a weird year. It's been a good year, but it's been a weird year. I think everyone is still trying to feel out what the industry looks like post-pandemic, right? So post post pandemic, whatever that means to you. Whether it was, I mean, a lot of our customers were working from home for a lot of years. They've since started returning to work. There was a lot of money being given out by the government, so a lot of people had just disposable income to send out. So the pandemic years were weird. They were great, but they were weird. So, when we're looking at our predictions for next year and the years forward, so we'll do a 1 year, 5 year, 10 year projection. And the 5 and 10 year obviously are not to the dollar, but they're an idea of where we're going and what we think we'll be doing in revenue. We're taking out, so we typically look at historicals on year growth, we look at election years on what those look like. But what we've been doing is taking 20, 21, and 22 out of the equation. Probably, honestly, we should probably take 23 out of the equation as well, because those were just weird years. They weren't real. There was a lot of money in the system that wouldn't have been in the system otherwise, whether it was canceled vacations, whether it was whatever it was. A lot of home improvement projects going on. But I think we're still, it's 2024. We're still a few years past that, but we're still feeling out what it looks like to do business post pandemic. Yeah. And so maybe this is a new normal. Maybe summers get slow. Maybe July and August. Maybe we just start planning for July and August to get slow. Would not hate that, because then maybe we could plan vacations in the summer without worrying about what it's going to do to productions and all that if we're a owner-operated company. So, yeah, I don't know. What have you guys seen? What does your guys' year look like? Alan says, we've sold our biggest job to date the week after the election. That's the thing. This is real, guys. You guys are in the same Facebook groups I'm in, likely, and we're all seeing this, that post-election, a lot of money came off the sidelines. I really didn't think that was going to be a thing, because leading up to the elections, we were still busy. Like I said, July and August notwithstanding, September, October, we were going strong. We were booking 6-8 weeks out. Everything was looking hunky-dory. And then the election hit, and then it got really crazy. So, I don't know. It's weird. Election years are weird. They still are. Douglas Cobb says, hi. Hello, Douglas. How are you? Appreciate you watching. Northwest Quick Pool says, hello. Hello, Quick Pool. Northwest Quick Pool. Guys, we have a video that we'll likely be shooting very quickly that features the Quick Pool product. So you guys will want to tune in for that. What's up, Justin? Making all things new deck and fence care. Hello. Good morning from ice-covered Omaha, Nebraska area. Stay warm and not staining today. Gross, Justin. Ice-covered, so no thank you. No thank you. And it's crazy because Omaha's not that far from, we're probably 7 hours from Omaha. It's not that far off. But today, now it is raining right now. So thank goodness it's 48 degrees. So if it were below freezing, it would likely be snow or ice. It's probably ice. For whatever reason, the last couple of years, snow just passes us right by and it goes straight to ice, which is never fun for anybody. Snow's not fun, really, if we're being honest. There's a conversation. So also, you guys should, if you aren't following me on TikTok, you should follow me on TikTok. So we don't really have fencing conversations over there. We just hang out and chat about things. Snow's been a topic of conversation the last little bit on, do we want snow or do we not want snow? The general consensus is snow for Christmas, like the day of. Like snow on Christmas Day, it can be gone the day after, and then no more snow for the winter would be ideal, because it thaws and turns mushy and everyone's yards turn to mud and it's just gross. What do you guys want? You guys want snow for Christmas or what? Douglas Cobb says, I watch your videos on YouTube. Douglas, thank you. I appreciate that. Benji, what's up, Benji? What's up, Joe and the Fence Fam? We're still seeing some fence contractors that have sluggish sales. Interesting. But most are still performing with year-on-year improvements, some less than others. And I wonder what that is. It's always hard to figure that out, right? Because there's no one lever to pull to increase sales, right? Marketing and advertising can certainly be one, but also it's just, in marketing, advertising is such a wide world, right? So are we talking about traditional media, or are we talking about radio, TV, billboards, etc.? Newspaper maybe? Probably not. Are we talking about social media, whether it's live videos like this, whether it's recorded videos, whether it's whatever it is? Maybe. Is it, Benji, what would you categorize websites as? I mean, they're not really traditional in terms of like radio, TV, print ads, but they're not really social either. I don't know, but websites is certainly one. I mean, obviously Benji takes great care of us on our website. We appreciate him and the team. I'll give Benji a quick shout out. So our My Salesman tool updated recently. We got migrated to 2.0. I had shot Benji an email, said, hey, here's the new URL. The old URL worked, but it just got forwarded to the new one. So anyway, email went out to Benji, got fixed. Shout out Benji. Thank you so much for taking care of us. But yeah, so why are some sluggish and others aren't, right? And this could likely even be in the same market. So we saw September-ish, we saw not massive, but a significant spike in residential. Our closing percentages went up. It wasn't a large increase in just proposals going out. There was an increase, but it wasn't 1-to-1 on conversions. So my thinking is someone in town either stopped doing residential or maybe they redid their pricing or something. Something caused our close ratio to jump up by about 10%, which if we're talking about, and these are random numbers, these are not our numbers, but if you went from 30% to 40%, that could be, depending on how many quotes you do in a week, that could be a substantial number. So I don't know. It could be somebody stopped marketing. It could be somebody stopped doing residential. I don't know. So it's weird that you also probably see this market to market where some companies are sluggish on growth. Some companies are having outsized growth. It's a weird world we live in, friends. It's a weird world we live in. That's the word. That's the phrase we're looking for. Justin says, thank you for your generosity and helping with Turkey for Soldiers. You're very welcome. So many blessed this holiday season. I love it. Justin, how many turkeys do you think, just ballpark, not to the exact one, but how many turkeys do you think you distributed? So Justin does Turkey for Soldiers, where he provides a Thanksgiving meal. And now I saw you're also spreading that to Christmas meals for troops at home that may not have the meal or may be just that making their holidays better. So shout out to you, Justin, for making that possible. I appreciate that. Douglas said, I built a 6-foot privacy fence in my backyard and a 4-foot picket fence around my front yard. Very nice. Very traditional. I love it. Your videos are very informative for me. Douglas, I appreciate the feedback. I'm glad we could help. I absolutely am. Dan Wheeler, guys, listen, if you like listening to podcasts, or if you're listening to this on a podcast and you're looking for another podcast to listen to the Fence Industry Podcast with the one and only Dan Wheeler. Or if you're watching this live, go over to wherever you listen to podcasts and you'll find Dan's podcast. It's good. Residential backyard jobs went bonkers after the election. They've been slower for us this year, and others in my market say the same. So isn't that wild? Like, I would almost expect it on the commercial side, right? So because it depends on commercial, you've got more considerations, right? So do we make asset investments, meaning are we going to remodel this, we'll use a manufacturer, for example. Are we going to modernize the lines? Are we going to expand? Are we going to remodel? What are we going to do? Or which would be a long-term investment, right? Or do we make a short-term investment in payroll? We could do raises, we could do bonuses, we could do this, because those are generally raises, not so much, but bonuses are obviously a one-time payment. Payroll is something that you can be more flexible with, whereas asset improvements really aren't. Once they're done, they're done. So commercial, we would expect to see more in election years, more uncertainty. Residential, I think people get tired of hearing the sky's falling. So if you think about someone that pays attention to traditional media, which there's probably a conversation there, one side tells them, hey, if this person gets in office, the sky's going to fall. It's going to be doom and gloom. The world as we know it will be over in a year. Well, that's a bleak forecast. Well, then the other person comes on and says, well, if this person gets in, this bad thing's going to happen, this tragedy is going to occur, and the world as we know it is over in a year. Well, that's a bleak forecast too. And no matter which side I'm leaning on, I'm like, oh, shoot, if the other person gets in, like, the world's basically ending. Each one says the world is going to be a worse place in it for having elected said other person. And maybe that's why the residential is sluggish in election year, that they don't know, right? They're being told that, hey, unless I get in, you guys are going to be in really bad shape. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of traditional media, so maybe that's why it didn't really, to me as a consumer, it didn't really matter who got elected. Now, me as a business owner, I had my leanings, right? But that's not what this show is. But yeah, so I don't know. It was an interesting year for sure. Justin said, helping 30 deployed families for Christmas and care packages this week. I love that so much. Christmas is my favorite time of year. Justin's just out there playing Santa Claus. That's what he's doing. Santa Claus with turkeys. Love that a lot. Justin, I appreciate you taking that on. I appreciate you having that idea and seeing it through. Uh-oh. We banned somebody. Guys, keep it PG in the chat. Was it non-PG, Mark? Bullying? We're not doing that for sure. We are not. We're not doing that. But guys, how was your year? Let's get into it. I say let's get into it about 100 times on this, I guess. Corey Bigelow, what is up, buddy? Hello, Corey. We have seen builders refusing to do speculative homes for 6 to 8 months. Interesting. I'm seeing more handymen going after wood fences. Absolutely. The low end wood fences are absolutely seeing a lot of handymen come into it. And I don't know how to say this without this sounding like I'm throwing shade at somebody, but I'm not. In general, there's a lot of contractors that see that as like a base wood fence as an easy thing, and then they get humbled pretty quickly. So so you would see this more in home builders, right? That are looking for the cheapest fence to get put in, that they can call a fence so they can add some value to the home without actually adding a lot of expense to the home. And so on some of these fences, I think handyman might be a stretch, but we're seeing a lot of that, which as a fence company, like, I don't love it because it makes our industry look worse in the short term, because those fences, there's some on the way to my house that are probably 6 months old that are rough. Specifically the gates. I mean, you guys that are professional builders, you understand this. The gates are the hardest to get right. And you can look at a gate and have a pretty good idea the skill level of the person that built it. So don't love it for us for the short term. But as a fence industry, I mean, it means a lot of fences are going to be replaced in the longer term. But yeah, so it's weird that you're seeing home builders refuse to do spec homes for 6 to 8 months, because still, and this probably varies market to market, but I think nationwide we're still in a housing shortage, single family home housing shortage. Now there's a ton of apartments going up, so multifamily, there's probably less shortage in that market, but there are segments of the homeownership or even rentals that don't want to live in an apartment, right? So if you picked me up out of my house today and said I had to go find a place to live, we're not taking my whole circus and putting us in an apartment. Like, that just, I don't see that happening. We're going to a home. So home builders, I don't know. I mean, now they've got their thumb a little bit closer to the pulse, I'm sure. So maybe local home builders see writing on the wall. Maybe there's too many builders in the market, and there's still a bit of a shortage, but maybe there's too many builders building towards that shortage. I tell you one thing we're seeing is, I don't know how to term this in terms of size, but private landlord groups. So not private equity, not these large 1,000 home groups or anything like that. But we did work for a couple that have a company, but they self-manage, they just oversee the whole thing themselves. It's not really a management company. We did 10 houses for them earlier this year. They had bought brand new, very nice houses. I mean, these were 3 to 4 bedroom. I would guess 2 bath, 2-car garage, right? So it's a typical starter home. 10 or 11 of these things we did. And what was even more interesting, so we gave them prices on kind of our base fence, and then we also gave them a price. So it'd be cedar materials, pickets, rails on a treated pine post. I hate building fence on treated pine posts, but there's still a market. We're not going down into treated pine pickets and rails. There's just a level of, there's a standard of quality that we're just only good with. So we're not doing pine pickets and rails. Anyway, we give them pricing for our economy, and we also gave them price with cedar materials, pickets, rails on steel posts, a Postmaster steel. And on all the homes, they went Postmaster steel. We also added a 4 foot tall trash enclosure at every one of them, cedar materials on steel post. So that's kind of interesting. So we usually don't see investors go in that route. Well, last week they reached out to us. They have another 17 homes that need fences and trash enclosures, and another 7 homes that already had fences, but they need trash enclosures as well. So apparently, our market is still good for investors to come into. And I went measured 5 of them, 6 of them yesterday, and I'd say all but 1 or 2 were occupied. So I don't know. So for home builders now, in our market, you've got kind of one of two. I'm sure there's several more, but you either build to sell, or there is a builder group that builds. They'll try to sell it for good money, but if they don't sell it, they'll rent it, right? So they've got their own property management side as well. I don't know. Different markets are different, apparently. Our market, I think, is still going strong as far as home builders, apparently, because by where I live, there's new neighborhoods popping up into fields that, I mean, there's a new neighborhood that goes up every 6 months, it feels like. Noah the Divine, what's up, Noah? What's up, Joe and Fence fam? Looking forward to a great year ahead. Happy holidays. Absolutely, Noah. I think we're looking forward to a very strong year. John says last 6 months have been terrible. Interesting, John. So, John, is that residential or commercial or both, maybe? What geographical area are you in? It'd be interesting to get a feel for markets, meaning that, and I don't know how to do this without, because so the AFA used to do a like an industry snapshot where they would ask for anonymous replies on, how much fence did you build this year versus last year? What was your percentage on residential to commercial? And they would accumulate all of this data and put it into an industry report. Actually, AFA didn't. They had a third party do it. It'd be interesting to do something like that again, to see, are there trends here? Are there trends in regions? So some regions residential top, some of it's not. It might make a difference on, so a lot of states are seeing residents from other states move, right? So if we're thinking Texas and Florida come to mind, they're seeing a large influx from, say, California, or there's a lot of Californians going everywhere else. So I was talking to a guy in the Denver market who is having a lot of business coming from California, which would stand to reason then that California probably isn't seeing a lot of business if most of their homeowners are leaving. So it'd be interesting to see what that dynamic looks like. So John, what geographical area? You don't have to tell me where you are or anything like that, but it'd be interesting. And what is that? Do you see that more on residential or commercial? Landmark Creations, what is up? What's up, fence fam? This year we shifted from wood fences to more chain link and commercial work. We did this intentionally because in our market, everyone does wood, landscapers, handyman, etc. I like that idea. So it is getting out of a saturated market and trying to move into a less saturated market. Commercial, it's a great way to go because the barrier for entry is a little bit higher. They typically do ask for all of your insurance up front. There's typically standards to what levels of insurance you have. There's also a higher barrier entry just as far as what the quality expectations are of the work. I mean, they typically know what to look for and what to expect and inspect. So commercial work is generally a little bit higher barrier of entry. So I like that idea a lot. How has it gone for you? Has it gone well? Matthew Sharadona, what is up? How are you, sir? Welcome. Benji says there's a lot of variables in different markets. Weather, politics, and market saturation has a lot to do with it. See, these are some complexities that would be interesting to get into. I mean, they'd probably make your head hurt, but I think they're worth getting into and just kind of figuring out, if nothing else, maybe to give guidance of, if you're in a market that looks like this, and maybe not, that looks like this in terms of maybe, I don't know, the things you said, whether politics or maybe weather patterns or what, maybe now's the time to make a switch somewhere else, or at least plan for that eventuality. I think, here in Missouri, So we see an influx from both coasts, and from the north actually. So one of these homes that I went and looked at yesterday, um, new folks had moved in from the north, one of the Dakotas. So I thought that was interesting. Usually we'll see a fair amount from the west coast. We see a decent amount from the northeast come down. So I don't know, for whatever that's worth. John says mostly residential, South Florida. Interesting. I think the election and 3 hurricanes really slowed things down. Well, and maybe the hurricanes more than the election. I mean, the hurricanes did a lot of damage. South Florida. So you're probably also seeing a lot of saturation. So when I talk to other contractors in Florida, that's one thing I hear is like everyone comes to Florida for whatever reason. I mean, well, for whatever reason, it's nice in the winter. That's why. I mean, I don't love living in a place where you wake up with a 6-degree wind chill. It's not awesome. But I was talking to a friend that lives in the Orlando area, and there it's been like frost overnight. It's been in the 30s overnight. It's like how big of a bummer would that be if you moved to get away from winter and then winter followed you? That would not be great. But also an overnight low in the 30s, I could probably get used to too, instead of the teens or single digits. So, but I think market saturation might have a lot to do with that too, John. I don't know. I don't know is the answer, right? There's just so many different variables to it. We should get my salesman to do a quarterly reports by state of numbers of estimates, no companies named. This is a solid idea here, Corey. I wonder if they track that, or if they have. I wonder if they aggregate that data. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. That is a great conversation. I have to reach out to Rachel and see if that's even an option. I mean, I don't know. I mean, think of the storage it would take for them to aggregate all the data from all the companies, but maybe. I don't know. That'd be interesting to see. I mean, if anyone in that, 100% storm chasers are definitely here. Gotcha. So definitely the market saturation, which, that's why Florida's really started cracking down on, from what I've heard. I haven't experienced this, but contractors' licenses and counties have their own contractor licenses requirements and all that, also inspections and such. But, it's the thing with licensing. I mean, plumbers and electricians are licensed, right? Supposed to be licensed. There's a whole permit process and this and that. But, in all these Facebook groups, you see guys they are not. They may be licensed. I don't know who these people are, but you see posts where it makes you question for the price. Like, I doubt there's any inspections going on. This is going to be work that's done without a permit, without any of that. Maybe they're licensed, maybe they're not. So I've got to think storm chasers, as far as fence contractors, probably are saying they're supposed to be licensed, they're supposed to pull permits and all that, but do they? I mean, if you go, there's a segment of the market that doesn't really care. Corey is agreed. Rachel's phone's gonna start ringing off the hook. She's like, "What is going on?" Agreed. Tony's conference, we were in Missouri. It was not warm. I never had a bad cup of coffee or biscuit the entire time. Agreed, Corey. Agreed. It was the weather. The weather was actually kind of like unseasonably warm. It wasn't. Well, I guess one night it was kind of cool, but yeah, and we were still waiting for winter to show up. Like I said, last week there was a wind chill of 6, so that wasn't fantastic. But here we are in the 40s, so I don't know. The weather here is a bit bipolar. Oh, John said they just did away with all licensing for fence. It's interesting. It's also an issue, I'm sure. 100% that's an issue. But the thing is, it's like, how does this saying go? Is something like, well, I don't know. If you make, well, I was talking about gun control, but basically like, hey, if you outlaw guns, that means only outlaws will have guns or whatever. If guns are outlawed, then only outlaws will have guns. So it's like, well, all right. So even if you require licensing for it, then you're still going to have people that don't pull permits, that don't bother with licensing, especially Roofers see this a lot too as far as storm chasers. They'll have guys come in that just have magnets on the side of their truck with a new phone number that they just pulled off of the internet. They've got Google voice number or whatever. Stop through, do a bunch of work, and then leave. And then when the time comes for warranty work or whatever, these people, the phone number's not connected, that company doesn't exist, because it's not particularly hard to start a company. I mean, depends on the state, I'm sure, but in the state of Missouri, really, it's just you pay a filing fee. You come up with a name, you pay a filing fee, then you're issued a certificate. If you choose to get insurance, that might be a little bit more. So insurance, especially workman's comp insurance now for a new contractor, they typically make you pay for the year up front. But even still, I mean, if you had an agency that you worked with, maybe that's not too hard. Anyway, it wouldn't be hard for someone to come into a state, start a new company, new branding, new phone number. I mean, they could go on Wix and throw together a website. Now, granted, Benji will tell you this is not an optimized website. This is not a great website. This isn't even a good website, but it's a website to where if somebody Googled them, boom, that would pop up. They could register, an address on Google. Typically maybe a house that they're renting or something. It's not that tough. Unfortunately, it should be, but it's not. But for what that's worth, John. I think that's how the storm chasing game works. That's too much energy for me. We're gonna stay right here in Springfield, and we're gonna just take the work that comes to us through the door or over the phone or through the website. You get the point. We're not chasing work at all. But there are people that make their livelihoods that way. They just follow storms around. So anyway, definitely a problem. And it's interesting but that does track that South Florida would have that problem, right? So you could probably, so we're at the tail end of Tornado Alley here in Southwest Missouri. Oklahoma, I'm sure, has their fair share of that during tornado season. The closest we've come was the Joplin tornado. What was that? 09, 2010 maybe. Yeah, 9 or 10. Maybe 11. My oldest daughter was really young. So anyway, 9, 10, 11. We did see a lot of out of town folks come in for that, which for better or worse, but that's where the whole licensing thing falls apart. Is none of those people, like I said, Missouri has a business license, but not a contractor's license. And the business license is maybe $50. So it's not tough to come up with a new company name, grab a Google phone number. So, but I'm sure there's states with storms that go through that a lot more than we do. But it's going to be a problem no matter where you go. So, and it's not going away. There's no incentive for those companies to go away. All right, let's go back up real quick. Guys, if you haven't said hello, drop in and say hello, because now we're going to talk about predictions. So, Front Rocket said earlier, what are your predictions of 2025 in the fence world with the elections finally over, back to a normal year? Guys, I still don't think we found what a normal year looks like, right? So, like I said, this year was kind of weird that late summer you had a lull, which for us in our market, summer's usually the busiest time. And it's not even close. So for us to have a slow tail end of the summer, you guys saw it in the Facebook groups. There's a fair amount of panic everywhere. I wouldn't call it panic here in office. We were obviously paying attention to it, but yeah. So I don't think we found a normal year yet. But again, maybe that's an election thing. We'll find out next year. We're planning for another increase next year. We've gone through, like I said, 1, 5, 10-year increase. So this year we saw double-digit growth. I think this next year I'd like to see something like 10 or 11% growth. Like I said, this year it was somewhere around 25, 26, 27%. I'd have to go look. But it was over 25% growth. And that's stressful because to growth like that takes, obviously it takes funding. You've got to buy the material in order to sell it, right? You have to hire the employees in order to get the fence in the ground or get the fence in out. So a fair amount of growth there. We're going to slow down a little bit. We're going to shoot for 10 or 11% growth, which is still respectable, still solid, but it's more of a kind of circle the wagons and figure out, again, standard operating procedures, figure out just how are we doing what we do. Can we find efficiencies? Because typically in growth years, and we've had several in a row, growth years, typically you're not really focused on efficiencies. Now you're paying attention to them, but you're not like really digging into them. At the Fence Business Conference, one of the presentations was on campsite. It was the thought was you can't stay in the same campsite forever. If you're going on a journey, you can't stay in the same campsite forever. Robert Whitaker, Purple Coaching, gave the presentation. His presentation is way better than what I'm going to say. You guys should absolutely reach out to him and ask him for this analogy. But if you're going on a journey, you can't stay at the same campsite forever, or else you won't get anywhere. You won't get where you're going. But you also can't just always hike. You got to stop, right? You got to stop, have a campsite. If we're talking about this, summiting Everest, you're going to have campsites, right? You're going to have to get to a certain level. There's going to be a base camp. There's going to be several camps along the way where you stop, you reassess, you reprovision, you rest, you get your mind right, you talk about where the next campsite is, how you're going to get there, that sort of thing. It resonated with me because we've been hiking for a while. We've been growing for a while. So I bought the business in 2016, and we've shown year-on-year growth every year, which you want growth. I mean, if you don't have growth, then you're obviously shrinking, right? But there's been a lot of growth, and we haven't done a lot of camping. We haven't done a lot of stop, reprovision, do some planning and strategizing, look for efficiencies, that sort of thing. I think that's what we're looking at for next year. I think we're looking at, again, double digit, but 10 or 11% growth, where we can still grow. We can still feel like, because also, part of this conversation is you need to outpace inflation at a minimum. Even if you're only at a 2% growth, 3% growth, technically it's growth on paper, but inflation passed you by. Those last several years, obviously, inflation has been a bit higher. But so 10% growth, even when you're accounting for inflation, still is growth. And that's kind of where we're at. That's what we're planning for. Then if we have a slow year, then that's fine. Or if it's a crazy year, then we're being really selective about what we do. If we're talking about residential, then we're being maybe even a little bit pickier with our standards. Maybe we're not offering treated pine post. Maybe our wood fence is cedar materials, cedar pickets, rails on steel post. We've done that before, and our guys were really happy with it because, the quality standards are obviously a lot higher. They're a lot prouder of their work. They don't love building with treated pine anything and putting their name on it because they know that, they know they built that fence. Even though they're not personally putting their name on it, they know. So maybe we do that. Maybe we get a little bit more dialed in with what we're offering on the commercial side. If we start seeing growth outpace that 10 or 11%, I think we'll find efficiencies there. I think where you find efficiencies, you typically find profit. And no one ever argues about having a year of better than average profit. So I think it's going to be a good year, guys. I really do. I think 2025 looks just as strong as any other year has. There's nothing really on the radar. Inflation's on its way down, which means interest rates are on their way down. Now, mortgage rates, interestingly enough, haven't followed the national interest rates or the general interest rates. So I don't know. We'll see. But for companies like us where our building loan is tied to the prime rate, we're loving this because now our monthly payment on this particular place goes down. But for the residential market, essentially, I don't think that's until mortgage rates to really start coming down. I don't think we start seeing a lot of new residential moves. We're seeing them, but it's just not nearly what they've been in the past. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Now, Alan's got a fair point. We just had a series of tornadoes on November the 8th. That's true. Now, abnormal, but true. For November. Typically, these are all in the spring, but Alan lives in Tornado Alley, so he'll tell you they can come up anywhere. Mark says the fence industry has so much competition because it's a low bar to entry. You don't need a ton of money to get started. Absolutely. And you know what? I think if not a lot of us, if not all of us, are thankful for that because at one point or another, that's how we started, right? So my grandfather started this company in 1955. Likely because there wasn't a high barrier of entry. The bar wasn't set too high. So I'm thankful for that. And you start seeing this in industries, not necessarily just in fence, you're seeing it in fence, but once you get companies that are in and established, they want to start raising that bar because then it holds out competition. but that's how they got there, right? So I think we need to keep that in mind too. Is I think every one of us is thankful that the bar hasn't been set that high. Now we can choose to set our own bars. It may be in terms of quality expectations, right? But artificial barriers of entry, setting the bar a little bit higher artificially, maybe through licensing or et cetera. I don't know that it works, and I don't know that it's effective, right? Those are absolutely the same thing, works or effective. But and I don't know that they keep competition out. So it is low. It is low. But I mean, I think we should be thankful for it. Those of us that have been in for a while and have found success here, it's because we were able to get into an industry that had a low barrier of entry. The bar was set pretty low. Now you can choose to climb up, right? So you hardly ever, I'm trying to think of an example, see someone go directly into commercial industrial work, right? Typically it's starting residential, find some success there, do really well. Some companies stay there and they do very well at that. Some choose to climb the ladder into commercial industrial, maybe going into bidding work. I mean, just whatever, whatever that is. There's some guys that do highway work, the highway barricades, the interstate barricades that do very well at that work too. But now that barrier of entry is a bit higher yet, right? So I don't know. You're right. The bar is set pretty low, but I think a lot of us should be thankful that it is. Mark goes on to say, this year we had nearly 50% growth. Damn. My year was spent almost entirely training and reacting. Next year, I'm hoping we only grow 10%, so we have time to refine all of our processes. 100%. 50% growth is wild. It is. I'm thinking of where we ended up at like 25, 26%. Double that. No, thank you. I mean, we could figure it out, I guess. But yeah, 10%, 11% is where personally, and this is not the advice of a financial advisor, I'm the furthest thing from that. But 10 or 11% feels right. 12% maybe. Low double digits feels right. You don't really want to get into single digits because you're getting close to inflation. But low double digits feels right for that exact reason, Mark. So you can have time to refine all the processes. So you can set up a camp. We're going to say, hey, this campsite, we're going to be at this campsite for the next year. And this campsite is going to be a time for refining our processes, refining our team, building our leadership, whatever that looks like for us, creating standard operating procedures. So we're working with Nick and the AFA, Nick, Jim, and the team at the AFA to build out a online training site for Ozark Fence to where all the training's right there. I mean, one, we'll have access to AFA training that they're doing. Nick and his team are doing a ton of work on getting that training available online. But then two, we can internally start creating training ourselves. Pretty excited for that. So that we can have a year of 10 or 11%. We'll reevaluate next year. It might be that we want 2 years. Maybe we want to stay at this campsite for another year because we're seeing good results, right? And that we're resting, we're recuperating, and we're ready to push on for more growth. Can you hike? Can you make an entire hike all by yourself? Sure. Without camping? Sure. I mean, there's people that do these, whatever ultra marathons. I mean, sure, you could run that far, but you got to train for it and you got to be ready for the physical ramifications of that. Or you can make the same trip, camp along the way, and end up better for it. So, and arguably probably go further. It's not arguably, you could go further if you're just camping along the way. 10% feels right, Mark. It really does feel right. For us, this year was a record year. I love that. Praise be to God. Next year, we're shooting for 20% growth. Okay. And see, planning for that, knowing that, I mean, you're ready for it as long as you know it's coming. So I don't think growth is bad. Obviously, growth is good as long as it's intentional growth. Right? It's not just growing for the sake of growing. Hey, next year we're going to try to do this and this and this. Listen, I am guilty of following all these shiny ideas. It's led us some new and interesting places for sure. But I think it's time for not following shiny ideas. But Kevin, I mean, you guys are obviously ready for it, right? And you're ready for growth. You're ready to get going. So I think planned expansion or planned growth isn't bad either. So no one's going to be on the same trajectory, right? No one's hike is going to look the same. No one's adventure is going to look the same. So Some of us are going to camp next year. Some of us are going to break camp at the end of this year, and you're going to start your own adventure for next year. Or maybe, I mean, it sounds like this year was an adventure for you as well. So maybe you're looking at camping 2 years off in the future. Anyway, I don't. We're straining this analogy just as far as we can take it, but we need to have Robert on to talk about this camping, because his was campsites and scuba diving, right? Campsites and diving, I think so. But anyway. What's up, Ken Throckmorton? Thankful for a safe year and wish everyone happy holidays. Amen. Amen to that too, Ken. As long as we're all safe and we're all here at the end of the year, that's sometimes a win. Like, hey, listen, we just got here. Okay, we made it to the finish line for this year. Maybe next year is time for a camp. Shane Catton, what's up, Shane? Shane was there for this talk. What's up, brother? Checking in late, but wanted to say hello, Fence fam. Hello, Shane. Hello. I guess we are right at the hour. Time flies when you're having fun. Hey, Shane, it would be interesting to hear your opinion on this, Shane, if you're still here. In that, what did your guys' year look like as far as growth? Because I know you and I have talked about this, and I've seen your post on Facebook. I already know this answer. How did your year look? Do you think the elections played a role in your year? And how does your guys' next year look? Curious. That's what we should do. So, guys, the next live is going to be after the first of the year. So we're going to be closed. Me and the family are taking a vacation we're leaving Christmas Day and we're coming back New Year's Day. So no lives in that, but we ought to start the lives off next year with predictions. I think that'd be fun. Corey says, because of our growth and workload, we were trying to set up KPIs to hold people to. I love that idea a lot. We've had so many specialized jobs this year that's been hard. So that's the thing. So specialized custom work, it's hard to have KPIs. It's hard to have standard operating procedures on any of that. But as you grow, you start having more of those specialized deals. So it's worth looking into. So we take 4 or 5, 6, specialized jobs, and we say, all right, but there probably are some similarities, right? So what are the similarities? So can we tie some loose KPIs to this? Can we have a loose set of instructions, SOPs? I think, Corey, I think you could see that. I think you could look into that and find some success there. Nam says, hello. Hello, Nam. No. We did about 15% growth this year, and I don't think it is as far as the elections. In all reality, we saw more spend and had a record month in 5 years in November. Very good. Very good. So one of the things I had said, Shane, was so we saw kind of the industry saw, I mean, we all saw this in the Facebook groups. July and August were a bit slow. Now, slow just in terms of they weren't neck-breaking months in terms of speed. So we saw a little bit of a pullback. And then at the election, right after the election, we saw all that spend come in on top of the normal spend. So that was kind of interesting on both residential and commercial. Commercial, I had expected it, but residential, that was a bit confusing. Northwest Quick Pull says, I hope you start the year off with your video on the Quick Pull. As do I. It's in the hopper. Anyway, I did get your voicemail. I'll give you a call back. I want to do it justice. I don't want to just plan a post and pull it. So it's in the works. It is absolutely in the works. Residential has naturally dropped by about 30% across the board. Interesting. Install and supply from what I've seen, but commercial is rocked from what I've experienced and seen. So residential, well, and so this is the thing we're talking about, Shane, is so in the Midwest, we've got a lot of folks moving in, right? And we're talking about Florida and Texas also seeing a lot of incoming homeowners or people moving in from out of state. Residential, we actually had our second best year ever since the beginning of the company in residential, but also our absolute best year in the last 4 years for residential. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. Commercial was gangbusters. Jeff said, what if you focus on your processes and procedures and end up making 8 to 10% more net money? Absolutely. I'd rather do the same amount of sales and work on efficiencies. Growth only matters if it translates to more money in your pocket, 100%. Why add more stress and anxiety and interactions with customers just to make less money? People have common misconception on growth as it relates to margins. Jeff, I think these are all fair points. And that's why we're to follow Robert's analogy, we're going to camp next year. We've had growth pretty consistent. Well, we've had growth every year since I've owned the company, and not double-digit growth, but growth nonetheless. In the last several years, we've had decent growth. So this is a year to start sitting down. And I mean, we are on par with industry average as far as net goes. But yeah, if we can camp here, find 5 or 6% more on net, we'll be much better off. So here's my thought about growth. I mean, growth is important though, right? So, and the analogy I'll use, and it, apply it if you think it's applicable, but Walmart could have been a regional chain, right? So they could have been in our neck of the woods. We've got Remy Price Cutters. We've got, well, there's a couple. It's not good that I can't pull them off the top of my head, but there's a couple just small regional chains here, and they compete with Walmart, and that's fine. But Walmart chose to grow, right? So same thing. So locally, we are the world headquarters of Bass Pro Shops. It started off, Johnny Morris Sr. started off selling fishing lures in his dad's liquor store probably 5 miles from here, right? It was right on the way to the lake. People would always stop and pick up by their night crawlers or whatever else when they were going fishing. So Johnny started selling fishing lures there out of his dad's liquor store. Then it went to regional. He opened up his own store, but now they're an international organization. So I think I hear you, Jeff. I hear you. Growth for the sake of growth is not a great idea. And it leads a lot of guys to failure, probably because, from a cash perspective, it takes a lot of cash to grow. And from a talent perspective, you have to find team members and you have to manage the growth. I don't think growth is a bad thing. I think managed growth is fine as long as you recognize it, right? And you say, we do need to take a year or two and really dial in our procedures. We really need to dial in our KPIs. Maybe we need to create our KPIs, or at minimum, we need to dial them in so that as we grow, we're better off for it. Yeah, adding more stress and anxiety for the same amount of money makes no sense. But if you can make the argument that, hey, if we grow another 15% and our net stays the same, well, now we'll be better off for it, because at the end of the year, when we're talking about dollars and cents, we'll have more left over at the end of the year. There's an argument on both sides. Now, the regional grocery stores here in town, here in our area, I'm sure do great. But I mean, we just heard, who was it? Kroger and Albertsons wanting to merge so that they would have buying power to compete with Walmart. That was ultimately shot down. Now one of them's suing the other. I think Albertsons is suing Kroger, or it might be the other way around, which is wild. So I don't know. Growth is good as long as it's managed growth, right? But sometimes you can be successful right where you're at without wanting to grow, right? Without needing to climb to the 10 million or the 25 million a year mark. Maybe you're great at 4 or 5 million a year, that you've got everything dialed in. That's where the journey to 10 is going to be stressful and strenuous, and you just want to party where you're at. That's fine too. I think there's arguments on both sides of the story, but Jeff, these were all great points. I'm so glad you brought them up. Northwest Quickpool, you're very welcome. Benji says, great point. Less work and more money. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If we could do one job a year for 20 million, like, we would just do that, right? But until that job comes along, we're going to do a few more. But that's what we should be looking at, is efficiencies. Benji says, I think there's still an influx of COVID contractors that started their business during the gold rush, and they are really pounding the pavement to get more work. 100% true. What is it? The average life cycle of a new startup is 3 to 5 years-ish. And I'm sure those are averages. So you're going to have some outliers that are shorter. You're going to have some outliers that are longer. But we're kind of right at that time level, right? Or at that time horizon. We're coming up on 5 years, right? It's 2025 coming up. So we're in there, right? Hopefully we're getting there, right? And that the contractors that just weren't quality contractors are seeing their way out. I'm not saying all new contractors. There's a lot. Listen, you guys have met guys as well as I have that have only been at it for 2 or 3 years that are doing phenomenal work. Those guys deserve to stay. But I believe those are the exception, not the rule, right? There are probably a lot of contractors that had started up that maybe they were great at what they did, but they weren't great at running a business. That's the most typical thing I see. Yeah, so we'll likely start seeing that peter out in the next year or two also. They're also severely undercutting their prices to get more jobs. Well, that's the lever they have to pull, which does hurt the market. It absolutely does. Um, but if you think about it, that's really the only lever they have to pull to push sales. Um, because they're already low price, they don't have funding to go into traditional marketing. Well, and they're not the ones at least that I've seen aren't doing any social media either, which is mind-boggling because it's free to do. I mean, it's all it takes time. It's the cheapest marketing you can do because all it does is take your time. I mean, all the contractors everyone's got a smartphone, right? So you can absolutely jump on there and do social media content for free. But like I said, they're not doing that. They don't have the funds for traditional media and marketing. So the only lever they have to pull is to cut prices. So we can do the same thing, but for less. Now, I think those of us that are able to market and are able to show the difference pull that lever and say, we'll go into a job and say, listen, we're not going to be the cheapest. If that's the outcome that we're looking for at this project, I'm probably not the right contractor for the job. Now, if we're going to have a quality conversation, if we want it done right the first time, if you want us to be around in 20 years when you need an adjustment on the gate, whatever, we can have that conversation. But if we're purely looking at dollars and cents, then we won't be the cheapest. And if I am, please let me know because I've really screwed something up here. Use your Bass Pro analogy. They didn't do Tracker Boats or Big Cedar Lodge with one or two stores. No, that's true. That's true. I mean, they grew into an international brand, and then they started getting into. So what's interesting is they own all of the bass boat companies except for one, which is, I believe, Lund. Yeah, Big Cedar Lodge and all the rest with one or two stores, 100%. He got into that a little bit later. So, but he did choose to grow. So would he be at owning the bass boats, owning the Big Cedar and Top of the Rock and all of this with only one or two stores? Absolutely not. He had to grow to get there. Now, obviously, he had that desire and he wanted that trajectory, so he went for it. But, if he had followed the advice that he should be comfortable at one or two stores, then, yeah, he would never see the continued success. He would have never been able to acquire Cabela's with all of the growth that came with. But that's what he wanted to do, right? I mean, you can go to most any major city and find an outdoor store that's independently owned, that's incredibly local, that's doing well, and they are likely comfortable and happy at that level. So, I mean, it's to each their own, right? I mean, growth isn't bad as long as it's managed growth and as long as it's recognized that this is where we're going. Was a bit of my point. But there's no wrong answer here, guys, right? Like the guys that choose to grow, I mean, we've got companies in the industry doing 30, 40, 50 million a year that are completely happy, right? We've also got companies that do 2, 3, 4 million a year that are completely happy. There's not a wrong answer here. But Jeff's point, I believe the core of his point is growing just for the sake of growth is wrong. Right? Because if you're growing and your net isn't following, then you're going to end up doing more work for less money or more work for the same money, which is also bizarre. You're going to end up, I mean, that's where resentment comes from. That's where likely failed relationships come from, is that you're pouring yourself into this and you're not reaping any rewards because you're not getting any more results out of it. Jeff, I believe that was your point. If it's not, I didn't mean to co-op your conversation here, but I believe that was kind of a bit of the conversation, is that growth just for the sake of growth is not right, is probably not the trajectory, but managed and planned growth can be a good thing if you knowingly get into it with that understanding. And I think it's possible next year. I think if we're going to roll this whole thing back into one, I think next year will be a year that if you want to grow, you can. I think it's going to be a good year. I don't see anything on the horizon. I don't think anybody's having conversations about next year being a slow year, being a down year in any way. Inflation's coming down. The wage growth is on its way up. So more of the people that are homeowners have disposable income to spend. And as far as I listened to a podcast on the way in, as far as G7 nations, the United States fiscal growth has surpassed all of our contemporaries, meaning, they brought up like Germany and Japan, that in terms of our contemporaries, in terms of our fiscal growth, we're outpacing everyone. So I think we're in a good position here, guys. I really do. So where if you want to grow, I believe the opportunity is there. Mark says, unmanaged growth, growing without a plan is just as likely to cause a company to fail through overextension. 100%, Mark. Absolutely 100%. And is also going to lead to an incredible amount of stress, and it's just sleepless nights, etc. Yeah, I completely agree. I think we're all saying the same thing here, that as long as you have a plan for growth, it's not bad, but growing for the sake of growing also isn't great. You do need to stop camp for a little bit, get a plan together, reprovision, reorganize, rest, and get ready for, marching up to the next camp. You need to have a plan, 100%. We absolutely should have Robert Whitaker on to discuss, because he's going to do so much more justice to this analogy than I could. So also going to be on Dominic. So up in Canada, so the keynote speaker, Dominic from Profit Tool Belt, spoke. He and I met up, and we're going to be on his podcast coming up next month, or we're going to record it next month. We should also have him on, because he had a great analogy about lighthouses and captains that I talked to our team about a little bit on our past First Friday. Probably also did not do that justice, but we should have him on also. So we're going to talk about lighthouses and captains, and also campsites and scuba diving. So, and how it relates to fencing. Benji says, I think 2025 is going to top 2004, which 2004 was a very good year. Was a very good year. Knowing your journey and what your mile markers are, 100%. Yeah, so 2004 was our best residential year, like ever, period, ever. It was a great year for us residentially. Yeah, so one can hope. I mean, commercial, we did good that year too. But now, hopefully we learned our lesson, right? Because the housing crash shortly after wasn't good for anybody. But I don't know. Hopefully 2025 is. Benji, we're going to hold you to it. 2025 is going to top 2004. Benji said it here first. Dominic is a genius. He is such a good guy. Are you a lighthouse or a captain? That is 100% the message I gave our team, our whole team, but specifically I speak into our team leaders. Are you the lighthouse or the captain? And you need to be both. In my mind, that's what I heard. Everyone could hear something different, but yeah, I'll let I'll talk about it for a minute, but I'm going to let Dominic explain it. What I heard, this is, like I said, I'll let him speak to it, but a lighthouse can help many people, right? But a lighthouse can't move, right? A lighthouse is obviously stationary. It can show you where the reefs are. It can show you where the danger is, but the captain is in control of the ship, right? So, but the captain can only captain his ship. He can't help other ships. He helps his ship. And he's responsible for his crew, and he's responsible for all that. But, so my takeaway, and there are several, but my takeaway is, are you responsible for your crew, or are you helping guide a larger group of people to the goal and keep them away from the goal? I also heard in that message that I am often too much of a captain. I'm trying to drive the ship, whereas I should be the lighthouse and helping multiple ships, so multiple divisions. So I usually get pretty deep into one division at a time, where I should be more of a lighthouse and guiding the way. So that was I probably did not do that talk justice. But Corey says, we had a contractor who wanted to dominate the market. We just found out his wife left with the kids. Being happy with what you have and where you are is important too. Yep. Corey, yes, sir. Absolutely true. I love the nautical analogy. Well, then you'll love it when Dominic actually does it justice. I gave a very poor representation of what his talk is about. So we'll coordinate that with Dominic and have him on to give the proper explanation of lighthouses and captains. So, Guys, we're at an hour and 20 minutes, so let's start wrapping these things up. I hope you guys had a great year. I hope you had a profitable year. I hope you have a plan for 2025 and what it has to come. Yeah, I think I agree with Benji. Well, I don't know if it's going to be the best year since 2004. I think we still maybe have a few steps to go, but I think it's going to be a good year. And I think if you have a plan and you work the plan, then you will find success. But failure to plan is planning to fail. So unplanned growth is never a good idea. But I believe if you guys want to grow and you want to do business, I think you'll find success in it. 2024 was a great year. If you guys found the show in 2024, I'm incredibly grateful for it. Thank you so much for showing up. Guys, I appreciate all of you guys in the chat and gals, all of you folks in the chat for helping this podcast go by making it interactive. If you guys are listening to this on the podcast and you'd like to interact live, youtube.com/Joe Everest, most every Saturday. This is the last one for the year, so we'll be back in early January with you guys. But thank you guys. I appreciate you guys for coming in, making this interactive. I appreciate you guys sticking with me through the years. If you've been with the show, if you followed the show for multiple years, I really appreciate that. This is the season for giving thanks, and I am thankful for you guys. I really am. I'm looking forward to having a great 2025 with you guys as well. All right, guys. For now, Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors, and I'll see you next year.